So when you were starting out, let's talk about the blends first, because you have really unique flavor blends in there. How did you go about first, figuring out which flavor profiles you wanted to do? Was it just you and your husband at home tasting different things? And then how did you actually figure out the measurements you needed? And then beyond that, how did you start sourcing the spice product? Because spices are not equal, and we know that.
Yes, that's true. That's true. So the blends themselves have morphed over time. I knew I wanted somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 blends because I didn't, I we could do so many, but I didn't want to have to be overwhelming in terms of choices for our customers. And so 6 felt like it had a good variety but not too many that people would get analysis paralysis. And 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 really, I wanted a couple of cocoa based ones. And when somebody suggested I put cayenne into my coffee, I was like, that sounds like a terrible idea, but I am willing to try anything. And it turns out I'm completely addicted to our cocoa and cayenne blend, which we call Hot Mama, because it's like, unexpected and it wakes you up faster than the caffeine and all sorts of things. So I think some of it was I had some flavor profiles that I had a sense of. Turkish coffee was another one that I kind of wanted to emulate. And so we had a flavor called Exotica for a while. It didn't do very well, I think, because people don't really know what cardamom is and or what it tastes like. And so it just didn't sell well. But when we would taste test it, people loved it. So over time, we've kind of morphed and figured that out. We've replaced blends. We did a March Madness. We've done a couple of March Madness of coffee dust flavors where we have people submit ideas. And our Cocoa Calm flavor actually came out of that. Somebody submitted like a cocoa and lavender, and it rose to the top of the brackets. And that is the one that replaced the cardamom one, the cardamom based one. So it's really been just kind of experimentation with a little bit of strategy in terms of like number and breadth of flavors. And then in terms of, let's see, you asked about like how do we start making it and get a commercial kitchen. Um, yeah, that was a whole thing. We couldn't make it at home because we knew from the beginning that we were going to sell over state lines, and so we couldn't do a cottage permit. We needed to get a commercial kitchen. And fortunately, my community is amazing, and our local senior center, which is a mile from my house, has a commercial kitchen that they would rent out after hours for $25 an hour. So it was like it would be us and the Bridge Club at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We'd be in the kitchen, and the Bridge Club would be in the big other area. And it was such a great way to prove out, like, does this make sense? And we have since moved into our own facility, but just what an amazing resource. And so I'd encourage anybody thinking about this. You don't have to go build out your own commercial kitchen right away. There's, churches and senior centers. There's, places that do just this too, that kind of incubate startups if you need a commercial kitchen.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes we get a little afraid. It's like, oh, a commercial kitchen, that sounds very big and official. But really, just what it means is that it's gone through the health testing and the standards testing that you need to make sure that, the foods that are coming out of the kitchen are safe. Because, listen, we might think our home kitchens are clean, but they are not. We get used to a certain level of cleanliness, myself included. But
Yeah.
anyway, going back to the actual spice blend. So you have your idea, you have your blends intact. Where did you start sourcing your spices?
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, as we all know at this point, if you just sprinkle cinnamon into anything, it tends to float on the top. But yours blends are a very, very fine dust, hence the name coffee dust. So how did you go about finding, first of all, the actual sourcing ingredients you wanted to use? And then how were you able to make it into this fine dust that really does blend with the coffee so well?